spiral today, and it can be found in your pickover book on page 66. So who is Archimedes? I'm sure you guys have all heard of him. He was born in 287 BC in Syracuse, Sicily. He was the most famous mathematician and inventor in ancient Greece, as you guys probably know. Very influential. He founded the idea such as like surface and volume and spheres and cylinders. So when you guys are doing like areas and all that stuff, he probably thought of it. He also, more importantly, developed the idea of the spiral, which we will be talking about today. And then here's a picture of him. So the spiral, the definition is a geometrically smooth curve that winds about a central point or axis while receding from it. So as you can see down here, that's a spiral. It starts at a point and then it just keeps winding and spiraling away from it. Some examples is like an octopus's arm when it's curled up. This is a spiral. A dead centipede, as you can see here, like you guys, I don't know, hopefully you haven't had this, but like in some rooms and stuff, there'll be like little dead centipedes curled up on the ground. That's a spiral. A giraffe's intestine, that's pretty cool. It's a spiral. And a butterfly's tongue, that's interesting. And then, so yeah, Archimedes' spiral is the most simple form of a spiral. And that's just kind of the, as you can see, the revolving pattern. And then, yeah, he discussed this in his book on spirals in 225 BC. And he passed away, I think, in like 212 BC. So he wrote that book not too far from the end of his life, like probably 10 years before he died. So more about the spiral is the general equation, as you can see there, is R equals A plus B theta. And here you have a diagram with numbers I'm sure you guys have all seen, 2 pi, pi over 3, 3 pi, all stuff like that. And then there's the equation again. So the A in the equation rotates the whole spiral, so all the way around, and then the B controls the distance between each turning. And yeah, this information I found in the pickover book. So some ancient examples of the spiral is in prehistoric, they had spiral mazes. So just like you could walk through mazes that were just like never-ending turnings. Engravings on the initiation chambers in Ireland, and that's what this picture is of here. So you can see that they carved out spirals onto the initiation chamber. Scroll work for Irish manuscripts and the Tibetan Tonka artwork. So it just was examples of having spirals in everyday life. Another thing is the Archimedes spirals oftentimes at burial sites in the prehistoric times, and they kind of thought of that as like the cycle of death. So you start at birth and then life and then rebirth. So stuff like that, and then the continual rising and falling of the sun. It was also used as symbol. So digging a little deeper, there's many other Archimedean things in the world. All you got to do is go on Google and type in Archimedes, and then the whole list of things comes up that he's thought of and came up with. The discovery of the symbol pi, that can be found in page 60 of the pickover book. He's kind of the one that came up with the symbol for pi. The sand cattle and stomachion, that's on page 58 pickover. Here's a picture of the stomachion puzzle. He kind of came up with that. It's just a bunch of like different shapes and stuff. And then the sand, that's actually pretty cool. He like came up with the idea, the like equation to how many sand grains would fill the universe. So he was like using huge numbers and kind of the first one to think of that. The Archimedean semi-regular polyhedra, maybe somebody's going to present on that, but that's also on page 64. That's kind of cool, dealing with like surface areas and stuff. Fermat spiral, logarithmic spiral, Ulam spiral, they're all variations of the Archimedean spiral and different ways of looking at it, stuff like that. The Archimedes principle is another popular thing. I think that's the first thing that pops up when you type it into Google is his principle. So all things you guys can look into if you want to learn more about Archimedes. Then Archimedes' legacy, he's obviously a part of the most significant mathematical findings and also in science and engineering. He's just very influential. Yeah, he's said to influence many other great minds like Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, and Isaac Newton. He's also known for discoveries dealing with astronomy, buoyancy, levers, and yelling out "Eureka," which means "I have found it." So he could do that when he found something cool. Here are my photo sources and my references.